Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Andrei Shevchenko, and on behalf of Mediacentru Ukraine team, I'm welcoming all the journalists who tell the world about our struggle for freedom. This time we will talk with Volodymyr Matsokin, deputy mayor of Izium. The Izium town is this year recently have been there many times have been there on the news, primarily as the center of this heroic Ukrainian struggle, and secondly as the city that has gone through a tragic fate of occupation, and then as a city who became the forecast of future Ukrainian liberations, the one that was liberated during this September this year in Kharkiv region. So, Mr. Volodymyr, can you tell us about how the city lives after the occupation? Good morning, everyone. I should say that the town is living and continues to live with the thoughts of big victories and the liberation of our territories that I would say and was quite expected by the population and unexpected that it happened indeed so fast and brought liberation to our community. But how the city lives today is following. Well, first of all, there is the restoration of livelihood of our community. We understand that we cannot achieve that level we had before the beginning of active combat warfare on Ukrainian territory. I mean, before the 24th of February. But anyway, today on all chains of command, from communal one to educational one, there is a restoring of all the processes that is basically characterizing our community in such a way that Ukraine came back to our community, Ukrainian legislation came back to us, Ukrainian spirit came back to us, and this is exactly what we are looking with, what we are living with these days. What are the biggest challenges you're facing in front of the winter time? Well, traditionally, these are the power stations, provision of gas, provision of heat into the houses, restoration of signal, and obviously the medical service of people. So all in all, these are the challenges we are facing. Among several of them, among those of them I told, the hardest ones is the restoration of centralized heating provision. That the one is that in our community will be allocated not all over all many stores, since on the territory of our community we have hidden facilities and quite powerful ones that are completely destroyed by the enemy. Okay, what can we talk about people a little bit? I'm gonna ask you a very easy question for the person who was in Izium before September and who continues to live there. What did change for this person? Because I know that day-to-day problems and challenges are obviously remaining, and they will remain like this for some time. And I doubt that uh, the life will come back to normal soon. So, what did change for these low and rank people? Well, if we're not talking about those communal problems we have emphasized, I would say that these people who have been there under occupation for 6 months, and right now we even understand that 6 months of occupation, this is something I would say a big challenge for a person and its psychological health, and this is something that one can feel. And if we characterize low and rank people there right now, what did they receive? So what they received are the things we did not pay attention to before the war. I mean the things of freedom of maneuver, ch- chances to go to the park, to walk your dog in the evening, or, for example, to do the homework with your child. So all in all, these are the things we had before the war, but we did not cherish them much. And also those possibilities of medical service of high level, or possibilities to withdraw money from ATM machines, or to go to pension fund, or to receive a letter through Ukrainian post office. So these are the things one can receive in Izium, or for example, to take a bus, or to take a rail train, or and to go with Ukrainian passport, for example, to Kharkiv. not by walk through Pechenege water storage, but the way we're used to, in comfortable conditions on a real road that we had between Izium and Kharkiv. And how is this coming back to people happening? How many people are there in the city, in contrast to those numbers before the 24th of February? Well, I want to say that we all understand that by the time of occupation, we did not have the exact statistic information, and it is not even possible to have it. But in our estimations, by the time of liberation of the city, there were approximately 13,000 of people living in this community. Out of the 13,000, there was 1,000 of children. As at right now, we have completely measured the number of people, and we continue doing it up to these days. And I would say that as at beginning of this week, we had 21,000 people living there in this community. All in all, these are people who need social services, for example, informational services that the chiefs of different committees provide to them, as well as the households of each of the houses provide us information, and these are the ways how we monitor this number of people coming back to the community. But at the same time, I want to emphasize that more and more people are coming back to this community, and many of them are coming back to the community in order to take a look at their houses and take a decision whether they have to preserve it somehow and to cope with the problem where they will spend this winter. Because obviously there are these people who do this and take these decisions for them. And these 21,000 people you have just said, in comparison to 24th of February time, what is this in percentages? Well, statistically, we had 51,000 of people living in our community, but as a matter of fact, there in our county lived approximately 35,000 people, since others could be outside of community, could be living in Kharkiv or all over the Ukrainian territory. But 35,000, these are the number of people who have been there in the Izium community on a day-to-day basis. How do you talk to people who have been there under occupation for 6 months? We anticipate that those things known to the rest of Ukraine became just now open and clear to those people who were in the occupation. Well, obviously this is hard, and every day of talking and seeing these low and rank people from Izium who have been there under occupation for 6 months, and every day opens up more and more new impressions in terms of psychological and the social state of people. That is why this is not an easy process. This is a process that will last for a while. And even this moment you pay attention to a person who has been there completely cut off from Ukrainian space and informational space, a person who has been there for 6 months under under offensive propaganda push and then pressure, a person who was in informational blockade. Obviously, I would say that this is something that will be studied, searched, and I think that the harm caused to the health and psychological health of these people, this harm is something that, that poses a big problem for us. But these kind of moments and this total guilt of aggressor, that we can definitely state that a person for this country is doesn't have any value at all, and one cannot even talk about primitive sticking to Geneva Convention, for example. Nobody can talk about even this. So imagine I told you a number of 13,000 people been there under occupation. At the same time, according to HQ data, approximately from 20 to from 22 to 26,000 occupants were there on the territory of our county. And this doesn't include the fact that there have always been new and new rotations, and each new rotation would come in order to kill, to loot, in order to do the searches of houses. And all in all, I think that the whole world understands that in Izium town and in our community, there happened indeed a tragedy. What is the mode the schools are working in Izium town right now? So in our town, and as well as on the territory of the whole Kharkiv region, the educational establishments work only in online mode. And I would like to emphasize that even though by the 1st of September that was a date when the city was occupied, but on the 1st of September in our online platforms in Kharkiv region, we immediately opened two educational establishments, two lyceums, immediately filled in with our children, with small pupils, from Izium. And another thing I would like to note here, one has to understand that our children are dispersed all over the world these days, not only all over the Europe, but all over the world. And this kind of moment, at this very moment, all our 9 educational establishments, I mean lyceums, are working. And those children who are there, for example, in Lithuania, Latvia, or Estonia, or in Sweden, they attend local educational establishments, but during evening time they continue their studies in accordance with Ukrainian program. So basically, they do not lose this touch with their community and with their country. What would you recommend to journalists, including foreign journalists, who for the nearest couple of days can be there in Izium? Are there any events or topics you would like to emphasize their attention to? Well, I simply So what one should pay attention to? Yeah, maybe some events or the most burning topics happening in the town right now. Well, these are all the elements of restoration of livelihood and sustainability of our town in all the spheres, from starting from bank sphere, finishing with power station spheres, starting from educational, finishing with the cultural. All in all, these are the elements of coming back to all these sections that are characterizing a town as a Ukrainian town and any community as a decent community. A community that acts filled with civilians and acts in accordance to Ukrainian legislation and Ukrainian spirit. And the last question I have about the future. Let's imagine a time after the victory. Anyway, Russian border will not move far or further from Izium town, and most likely the threats and risks will stay with us for a long time. When do you think about the future? When you think about the future, what should change there for Izium, and what should change there for Kharkiv region, and how should one not only restore the life of people, but how you and the citizens how to make it for you and the citizens be able to look into the future with assuredness. Well, I have already heard this expression from Izium population, Izium people. They say that nobody can get rid of this crazy neighbor. He will always be there. That is why I think that at least the experience of Slovyansk, it tells us that yes, Kharkiv region needs some decisions in terms of defense. I'm not a specialist here, but I think that one has to reinforce the defensive lines as well as to keep our armed forces on alert mode. And I want to emphasize that our community will create all the necessary conditions for placement here of our military personnel in that state, in that position where it will be decided by our armed forces and National Guard leaders. But all in all, yes, this is a mode we will be living for a long and long time with this kind of percentage of danger. But this is something that will not stop the development of Kharkiv region and our community. And I'm quite sure that if we sum up all these parts, and the functions, including the function of defense of territorial community, I think that it's all gonna be alright, okay, and it will not take much time to, with the help of our international partners and our government, in order to make the life of our community decent. The exact decent anticipated by the constitution of our country. Thank you so much. That was Volodymyr Matsokin, Deputy Mayor of Izium in Kharkiv region. Thank you so much for this conversation. And our next briefing will take place at 12 o'clock. We will talk with the initiator of Tribunal for Putin. Follow